All right, Coach Chris Laughlin back again. So I had to do some follow-ups on yesterday's post on the gymnastics movements for weightlifting. So pretty quickly afterwards, I had talked about in that video, I talked about the pull-up and the dip being some of my go-tos. And pretty quickly after that, I got a few questions on if you can't do a pull-up or you can't do a dip, how do you go about getting to the point where you can? So I wanted to do a video on pull-up progressions, then I'll do another follow-up video on the dip progressions. So in general, what I do, coming from a gymnastics background, is when we're developing this body weight strength, we want to focus on kind of going in progression of one is going to be like a foundation type strength building, but then we're going to really build that strength through static holds and then to eccentric work to concentric work. It's mainly because those are the your static position is going to kind of be your strongest position. Your eccentric is going to be your next, and then your concentric is going to be your least strong position. So what that allows us to do, though, is allows us to start working on those positions in positions that are stronger for us. So when we talk about like a static hold, that would be like for the pull-up, it would be like a chin hang, and then the eccentric would be like a chin negative, and then the concentric would be doing like the movement, the chin up. So we're going to go into some of these videos before, though, because a lot of people can't even start at that static hold position. So what we sometimes need to do first is create some foundation strength, and we do that through horizontal pulling type movements like ring rows and body rows and things like that. So we're going to start there with the progressions for the rowing movements, and then how those, once we get there, they feed right into the pull-up progressions. All right, so we're starting with the horizontal rowing. So the ways you scale this and the way you progress these are the more upright you are, so the further you walk your feet back, the less weight you're going to be pulling, so the easier it's going to be. So to start these out, like you see, I'm currently at kind of like that 45-degree angle, but you could even walk back even further if you needed to. Now these can be performed on rings, on the TRX type things, or even just like a bar. So you can set bar at different heights and adjust your angle doing that and just kind of rowing yourself to that. So, but the main focus here is that as we progress, you're trying to load it more and more and more. And then on top of that, notice the full range of motion that we're going through. So every time I pull, I'm pulling as far as I can to where my chest makes contact with my hands or the rings or a bar if you have that. And you're really trying to squeeze your back as you're pulling. So let's kind of go through these progressions. So I'm pulling up all the way to the chest, really squeezing the back. And then as we progress, I'm just going to load a little more by walking out further and further, pulling all the way to the chest, keeping the body straight, and then even eventually to an elevated foot position, and then rowing. So that would be kind of like the last progression before we move on to actually going into like the pull-up progressions. All right, now for the pull-up progressions, we're going to progress again, like we said, from the static to the eccentric to the concentric. So we're going from where we're just holding and just kind of developing the ability to contract all those muscles and support yourself, to elongating the muscle, which you can think of as going down, the negative, and then eventually shortening the muscle where we pull back up. So let's kind of go through some of these progressions. Now these are going to be going through a little bit quick because I try to put them all together in one video, which you can find on our YouTube page as well, just pull up progressions. So let's kind of start going through these. So we got this first one where we're going to jump to the top and then I'm going to hold. Typically what we're trying to develop here is at least like a 30 to 45 second hold. Ideally maybe even up to about a minute. All right, now you're going to see us jump to the top and then slowly lower our way back down. What I'm looking for here is that we're controlling it all the way to the bottom. So we don't want to lower and then like halfway down, drop really, really quickly. We want to see that we can control the movement even to the bottom position. And then sometimes what I've done with this, when people get stuck trying to go from like this eccentric or this negative to where we actually start pulling up, what I'll do is I'll have people lower down and maybe stop and hold at 90 degrees, and then lower down, stop and hold a little bit below that, stop and hold a little bit below that. So that way we're also building that strength in every single area, because sometimes what you'll see is really strong at the top and then really weak at the bottom. So then I'll start making them do pauses during that eccentric even as we pass that halfway down point. So that's the eccentric all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to go to the chin up. So notice that I set my palms up facing my body, so I'm in that supinated grip. That is because it's a slightly stronger pulling position. So we get more muscle contraction in that under grip position than we do in the over grip position. So a lot of times people are going to get that position before they get the over grip, but we can start working on developing those muscles. So if you also noticed in the chin hang and in the chin negative, and now in the first chin up, it's the palms facing the body. And so we start there because it's more likely to get the movement, get the range of motion down first, build that strength there first before we go to the next. So then we develop the ability to do the under grip or the chin up, which is what I call it. And then we eventually progress to the over grip. Now the hands are facing out and we're pulling all the way up to the top and controlling all the way back down to the bottom. All right, so there's our progressions from beginning to end on being able to develop a pull-up. Now, as far as like prescription goes, I basically required a test out for each one of those movements to be able to move on to the next. So a lot of times what people do is they try to move on too quickly and they hit a wall. So I need to see that they can do the static hold or you know, the negatives to a certain point before we move on to trying to attempt the next goal or the next progression. So the way that that looks though is with the foundation movements like the ring rows. Those I actually want the muscles to get a little bit larger and create a little bit of endurance with them. So with all of those up until the point where the feet are maybe elevated, I want to see that they can perform at least 10 reps of those. So they need to show a solid set of 10 where they can pull all the way up to their chest before they kind of move their feet out a little bit further, or they get to that point where they lift their feet up. Once the feet are lifted up, that row is much more challenging, so it kind of depends on the athlete there, but usually that 5 to 10 rep rule. After that, it's usually looking at a 5 rep rule for most progressions. Now that's going to change because we have the static and the eccentric. So like my static holds, I typically have like a 45-second hold is usually enough for them to be able to move on to being able to do the negatives. On the negatives, I want to see that they can control the movement all the way down. So I usually set like a 10-second time on the eccentric, but that needs to be spread across the whole movement. That's almost more important. So a lot of people might be able to do 8 seconds from the chin down to parallel, but then it's only 2 seconds down to the bottom. I need to see that it's spread across the entire movement. And then they need to be able to show that they can perform that for at least 5 reps. That doesn't have to be like one right after the next, but they're strong enough to do one, kind of shake it out, jump up there, do another. So the kind of the 3 to 5 rep range on the chin negatives. But then once we get into like the actual movements like the chin ups, I want to see that they can develop a solid set of 5 chin ups before moving over to the pull up. They can develop a solid set of 5 pull ups, and then we can always increase the complexity of that after that. So they can do this solid set of 5. Now can they add weight to it? Now can they maybe pull up to their chest, which is also kind of the progressions I would use to eventually getting to like a muscle up, is just continue to increase the range of motion. Or if you're just wanting to develop the pull for strength, then once we have a solid set of 5 with just the body weight, then we add a little bit of weight. We find a good weight, get a solid set of 5 there, then we progress from there. Then I usually have them training it anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week. We see pretty good progression with that. So that's kind of my way of developing the pull-up, and it's been tested, and it 100% works. So if you like this video and you want more, be sure to click on the subscribe button. You'll see a picture of me in one of these corners. Click that, subscribe. It'll help me continue to do these videos. All right, talk to you later.